August 9th, 11:51 p.m. Running a little late tonight, but had a productive day. And I want to get to bed real fast, so real soon. So let me get through this one real quick. First of all, did all my usual stuff, hit the gym, all that good stuff. I spent a good 3 or 4 hours today cleaning up my entire apartment. Everything's looking spick and span. So that was where a lot of my day went. And then after that, I went out to the park to do my usual chilling and writing my scripts and meditating and all that. And I ran into Shane. I don't know if I mentioned his name before. And also I told him about, it's this guy that I met a few days ago at the park. And I was sampling some music he was playing on his guitar. Anyway, ran into him today and I told him about these videos. So he might see this. So what's going on, Shane, if you end up watching this video. Anyway, I ended up chilling with him and talking to him for I think an hour and a half or something. I was planning on going back to my place and working on the game, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I barely ever talk to anyone nowadays, so I figured any opportunity for social interaction, might as well enjoy it. And it's a Saturday anyway, so I chilled out there with him for a good hour and a half or so, maybe even 2 hours, I don't even know. Hit the grocery store or whatever, finally got back. So I did get some work done on the game still as well though. So let me show you what I did. I did exactly what I said I was gonna do. I still didn't get to decorating the level, but I got around to adding some effects for when you destroy the enemy archer arrows. Let's take a look here. It's pretty cool. Feels pretty satisfying, so take a look. And there it is. See the arrow split in half as you destroy them. It's pretty satisfying. Feels pretty cool. You can also see it when you, for example, block it with a shuriken. And you can also see it with the flashbang as well. Maybe I should make that stun you if he blows it up in your face. Or you blow it yourself up in your face. So yeah, that's all I did today. Just got that done real quick. But that sets me up for tomorrow, since now all that's left, as far as I can think, is to finally decorate the level, which I can probably do that in one day. And then I'll be done with level 6. Exciting stuff. Hopefully also I'll have some time to get to working more on my new video series. That was something I was thinking about doing today too, but again, ran out of time. And I do still have a bit of a problem with, even though I've been going to bed on time every night, maybe a little later tonight, but mostly I've been 90% consistent, but I keep tossing and turning when I'm trying to fall asleep at night, and so I end up sleeping in, so I don't have as much time during the day. So I think my next step with improving my schedule, perhaps the last step, is I just need to, I think, really force myself to wake up at a consistent time every day. I'm thinking 7 a.m. and do my best to hit the hay at a consistent time, which I've been good about. So just need to get, I think, the wake up time down, and hopefully that will habituate my body to going to bed at a certain time as well. One last thing I wanted to talk about today. I was thinking about this yesterday. So thought I would mention it tonight. I'd recently been mentioning, I'd been watching a lot of videos from Channel 5 with Andrew Callahan while I've been working on my game. Pretty cool stuff, cool guy. And the first video I ever watched from him, and the thing I wanted to talk about was, and I don't even remember the exact word for it right now, hallucinogenic persistent perception disorder? Hallucinogenic persisting perception disorder. Hallucinogen persisting perception disorder. So he made a video on this topic, which is not something you hear much of anyone almost ever talk about. And apparently it's pretty rare too. But he made a whole video on it, and it was the first of his that I saw that made me watch, because before I'd seen some videos of his before, and I thought he was just one of these typical kind of hacky comedian types who go out into rallies and audiences and find like some crazy stupid person to make them look bad by interviewing them. I was very wrong. That is actually not really what he does most of the time, although maybe back in the day. But now he does more like proper journalistic stuff. And anyway, it's pretty cool. But so the first video I saw of his that was actually really interesting to me and made me realize like, oh, never mind, he does really cool shit too, was this episode on HPPD. And the reason why this particularly caught my attention is I discovered through watching this video that I have hallucinogen persisting perception disorder. When I was a kid, as far as I can remember, this was before I ever did any drugs, I always had a little bit of visual snow in my field. And if you don't know what that, in my vision, my field of view, if you don't know what visual snow is, it's almost like you are constantly seeing the static on a TV screen, but everywhere, all the time. And I think when I was a kid, it wasn't very strong. It was something I only noticed if I really paid attention to it, if I was like consciously making an effort to notice it. And I remember thinking when I was a kid that I was just seeing like molecules. I thought like, oh cool, if you focus enough, you can see germs and molecules everywhere. Yeah, turns out that's not what that is. Turns out I have something fucked up with my brain. But yeah, so I had it before I ever even did any drugs. And this is not the only thing in HPPD. There's also lots of other stuff involved in it. It's not just visual snow, but visual snow can be, from what I understand, one of the symptoms. And so later on, I've mentioned on some previous videos that I've experimented with psychedelics before. When I was in high school and I was in college, I did mushrooms a bunch of times. I did acid once or twice. And my condition seems to be kind of different from Andrew's a little bit, insofar as he apparently, when he was 14, he did mushrooms and he woke up the next day and just had this permanent, these permanent distortions in his field of view, and that he's had ever since. And I guess it's, from the way he describes it, it sounds really intense compared to mine. I think my experience of it might be a bit milder. But another difference is that he experienced it right away. Like he woke up one day and it was just there. But for me, it seems to be more of a gradual thing. And I think maybe in part because I, as far as I can remember, have had it ever since I was a kid, even as long as I can remember, before I even ever did any drugs. So for me, maybe it was more of exaggerating an issue I already had and also possibly adding some extra stuff to it. So for me, I only noticed it really when I was, or even thought about whether there was anything even wrong with me when I was like 25, 26, 27. I remember just one day being in my bedroom and looking around and thinking like, is it normal that I see all this shit all the time? And for me, what it is like I said, it's part of it is the visual snow, this like staticky dots that I see everywhere all the time. I also have tinnitus, which I don't know if that's really a part of HPPD, but I've had tinnitus for as long as I can remember as well. And which, if you don't know, is a constant ringing in your ears. Like if you ever go to a loud concert and you have the ringing in your ears, yeah, I have that literally forever, for the rest of my life. And on top of that, it's also the visual snow combined with, I don't know what the word is for them, but it's like, if you look at a light for too long, you get kind of like the afterglow and you can see it in your vision for a while. It's like that all the time and without even looking at any lights. Like I get like weird flashes of, it's not colors, but like imprints of things I just looked at and like after images and stuff. And it's like everywhere all the time. Now for me, it is only really obvious when I'm looking at something monotone or monochrome, I don't know what the word for it would be, but like here, all these walls here are white. Any kind of like flat white surface, or any kind of surface that's just like one flat color like that, there's no texture to it, there's no nothing else, that's where I see it the most. It's like at like my white walls here in my field of view are like, it's like a trip. It's like a full psychedelic trip happening all the time. Also, if I close my eyes, I can also see, like I always have like crazy trippy imagery and kaleidoscopic type of imagery going on behind my eyes. Anyway, So yeah, it's pretty wild stuff. I guess for me, because it came on gradually, I was always so used to it. I didn't even think about the fact that it was unusual and that there was anything wrong with me for a very long time. And it wasn't until I saw that video that I realized, oh shit, listening to it, I was like, okay, I guess I have something actually. I have this HPPD. And I remember, funny enough, way back in high school when I first read about people who did psychedelics a lot, that one of the risks of taking psychedelics is that in some people, although at the time I read that it was only for people who do it like a lot, it's not something that just happens randomly. But that they can develop this disorder called HPPD, and which was probably what stereotypically back in the day people thought of as flashbacks, that if you do acid, you can get acid flashbacks, and it's like all of a sudden in the middle of the day you're tripping. And it's not exactly like that. It's more like just weird distortions in your visual field, and maybe HPPD is what people were actually talking about. Turns out there's also no cure for this. There's no way to treat it. Apparently, the only thing that's even known to make it better is to drink alcohol, which is obviously not good. And I'm not much of a drinker anyway. And I've also never really noticed that alcohol makes it any better for me. But to be fair, I'm not paying much attention. So like I said, I only see it the most when I'm looking at like a really flat color. If I look at the blue sky on a clear day, for example, it also looks totally crazy to me. But when I go about my day to day, I go outside and I just see like lots of different colors and textures and just, you know, the usual stuff that you'll see as you go about your day. Then I don't really notice it as much. If I'm like looking, for example, into a forest and there's all these different trees and leaves and plants and everything, I don't really see it as much. It seems to kind of just blend in and fade away for me. Similar to my tinnitus as well. When I'm going to sleep at night, I can very clearly hear my tinnitus and it's really ringing in my ears. And like I can hear it now, for example, if I really focus in on it. But I go outside, I'm walking around in the city, same deal there. I don't notice it at all. It just blends in with all the noise and kind of gets drowned out. And because I've been so used to it my whole life, it doesn't bother me too much when I go to sleep at night. Like maybe once in a very long while, I'll suddenly become very consciously aware of it, and then it'll take me like 30 minutes to get used to it again before I can fall asleep. But yeah, so most of this stuff never really, the only thing about it that actually really bothers me is just the thought that for the entirety of the rest of my life, I will never be able to hear silence, and I will never be able to see a truly clear image. I am always seeing, at least even when there's other textures and colors and stuff, there's still always a kind of distortion going on, like weird shit going on in my vision. It's not as bad, but still. Like I said, with Andrew, it sounded like his is a lot worse because he talks about how during interviews, like when he's looking at people, that he just like sees shit going on all over on their face. But like mine's not quite that bad. If I'm talking to someone, I'm focused on their face. Like again, it's kind of like my tinnitus. It sort of like blends in and I don't really notice it as much. So not that bad. However, this leads me to the other thing I wanted to talk about is related to this HPPD is, sorry, one second. Yeah. The other thing that he mentioned that he experiences apparently as a result of his HPPD is something called depersonalization and derealization. And these are also experiences that I've had. And this is fucking terrible. It's really terrifying. So mine has never come, as far as I know, as a result of having HPPD or any of this stuff in my visual field. Apparently for him, he seemed to connect it to that, and that's what caused it for him. For me, it was just one day when, I've mentioned many times before, of course, I used to be a pothead. I smoked for like 14 years. And one day when I was older, I smoked, I don't know, a lot of weed, which I did many, many times. And I experienced this depersonalization, this derealization. And if you don't know what it is, it's like, if you've ever seen the movie Get Out, and you know the part where the lady is hypnotizing him and then she sends him back into his mind and he goes like falling back into his head, and then he's seeing, almost like he's watching from afar, a screen of what's going on in reality, like seeing through his eyes but on a screen that's further away. It's kind of that's like a visual representation of what it feels like. It's like you're trapped inside your head and you're watching yourself do stuff, but you feel like you're not actually, it's not even about like not being in control. It just feels like your soul and your consciousness is completely disconnected from the rest of your body. and it's like you're just an observer trapped inside this body. And coming along with that, the derealization is this feeling that like everything is kind of like nothing is real. You just feel completely disconnected from everything. And the other thing that I experience sometimes in conjunction with this is something called thought loops, which is something that is known to people when you're having a bad trip on any kind of psychedelic. You can get into this state of mind where you're repeatedly experiencing yourself having the same thought over and over and over again, and it feels like you can't think about anything else. And it's really bizarre because objectively you may be able to change your mind into thinking about something else, and yet somehow it feels like you have found yourself thinking the same thought again. I don't know how else better to describe it. It's really hard to convey any of this stuff unless you've experienced it. But it's terrifying because it feels like you're losing your mind and like you can't get it back under control. And it's not even like dark thoughts or anything like that. Like it can be the most mundane thought in the world, but you just find yourself like repeatedly thinking that thought over and over, like a single sentence just repeated to yourself infinitely. And you try to change the sentence, and technically, objectively, you change it in your head, but it feels like it's the exact same sentence you just said before. I don't know how else to describe it. It's really fucked up. Anyway, the derealization and personalization stuff was something, like I said, it only hit me when I smoked weed. And it's something that for the most part, I only experienced a lot anytime I was high. And it came together at the same time with just intense feelings of anxiety. Now, when I would be high and I would experience those, and by the way, the first time it ever happened to me, and I'm pretty sure this was the first time ever, I also got like uncontrollably shaky, and I had never experienced any of this before. So I actually freaked out so hard that I called 911. I figured I was just having a freak out and I'm probably fine, but I was like, well, just in case I'm actually dying or something, probably good to call someone. And this was like 4 a.m. This was back when I was living in London, Ontario too. So these 2 paramedics showed up. It was like 2 young guys too, and they were just like really chill and everything. So they helped just sit there with me and calm me down and everything. Check my heart rate and stuff, and everything seemed to be okay. And over the time of hanging out with them, I calmed back down. I was okay again. So yeah, I was just kind of freaking out. But it was after that experience that I continued to experience it every now and then, most especially when I smoked like too much. If I smoked just a little bit, it didn't happen as often, but yeah. And then after that, when I continued to smoke, which I don't anymore, still on my 1 year, 7 month of not smoking so far, which I plan on doing for another 3-4 years, I mentioned before. But when I continued to smoke after that, I had to increasingly, like over time, I started using like weaker and weaker strains of weed because I couldn't handle it anymore. Like I still wanted that feeling of getting high, but I couldn't risk it anymore because the unpleasantness of that experience anytime I had it was so bad. Well, a while later, after I had experienced this a bunch of times. So first of all, like I said, I almost only experience it when I'm high. And typically what would happen is it would last like 30 minutes, an hour, maybe an hour and a half, something like that. And then I would come back down and be fine. Sometimes it would be like, it would last really intensely for like 10 minutes. And then 5 minutes would go by and I'd be totally fine and relaxed. I'm like, okay, back to normal. And then 10 minutes later, suddenly it kicks in again. And I'm like locked in my own head again. Pretty crazy. But once I stopped smoking, and anytime I'm sober, I almost never experience it, except for once in a while when it's late at night, maybe I haven't eaten all day, like something like that. I do notice that I'll occasionally get a night where that anxiety kicks in out of nowhere, and I feel a little bit of that derealization. But it's nowhere near as intense as when I would be high, and it is much shorter. It'll be most of the time it's literally like 5 seconds. Like it's just a passing moment where I suddenly feel like I'm in that state, and then it goes away. I did, however, about a week ago, have one night where I went out to the park and I sat down, and for the first time ever, it actually came on pretty strong and I could like feel it coming. That's another weird thing. You can sort of like feel it building in your head, like there's some kind of big anxiety attack coming. And the thing is, though, is I've kind of gotten used to it, and I knew that I had to sort of just ride it out. And I remember talking back and forth with ChatGPT a little bit about this because I wanted to learn some more about it. And it was suggesting that now that I've gone so long without smoking, it's kind of like my brain reorienting itself. And so these are sort of like echoes of the past of this experience, and my brain has to go through the experience of learning that, like, okay, I'm safe. It doesn't need to like put me into this anxiety state. And every time I go through one of those phases, that it's like retraining my brain to learn to calm down and be relaxed, and that there's nothing to freak out about. Because like I said, this happens just randomly, almost always at night, almost always seems to be somehow related, maybe even to some diet thing. But yeah, anyway, kind of freaky stuff. But over time, it happens to me less and less, and now I seem to have a good handle on it. The thing I was going to say, though, was what I discovered about it. So it turns out what this experience is, it's a defense mechanism for your brain. And it specifically happens when you're experiencing really high levels of anxiety. And so it triggers your brain to do this like detachment from reality in order to kind of like numb everything. And so the intention is probably meant for like really intense traumatic experiences, like literally you're about to die or something. So it lets you sort of like dissociate yourself from your body, and that's what the point of that is. And so it's kind of a natural behavior, but in this context, it's your brain misfiring. It thinks you're like free, like something's dangerous, I guess, in the environment, and causes you to freak out in a way that is not actually appropriate to the situation. And that's what triggers this to happen. Some people will, and this is the thing that was fucked up to me that Andrew said, is that he experienced this constantly. To me, it was always like short-lived, maximum, like a long experience of this was like 1 or 2 hours. He seemed to say that pretty much he's just constantly experiencing this, which is insane to me because it is a fucking terrifying thing to live through. I feel like I do have, so there's a bit of a longer story here I want to tell also about how I feel like I've been experiencing a very mild version of it for a long time now. But before I get to that, I was just going to say, yeah, so it's like your brain misfiring, and some people will experience it for a very long period of time. Usually something triggers it. And I did notice oftentimes when I would be high and that state of mind would kick in for me, it was very often the case that I would notice something about my body, something I thought was maybe wrong or off, like maybe I'm sick in some way. And then I would start to get paranoid about it. And I think, oh shit, what if I have cancer? What if it's this? What if it's that? And it's all very unreasonable, very irrational. But I start thinking that way, and that's when the state of mind would kick in. So it's very much that like my brain trying to protect me thinks like, oh shit, something's going down, trying to help reduce the pain or whatever, when really I was never in any danger. I'm just like super high and paranoid and freaking out. Pretty terrible. So yeah, Andrew talked about how he experiences it all the time, which is pretty rare. It seems like most people, even some people, do get triggered by something and then that experience will last for them for like months. But typically, like, you'll come back down to normal at some point, especially if you abstain from whatever it was that caused it in the first place. But he said that he experiences it all the time, which is absolutely insane. And what I wanted to say that I relate to that at least a little bit, though, is I haven't had anything that's like I'm experiencing that all the time. But I did experience, I feel like for almost the entire past year, a kind of mild version of it. Like as if there is this layer sitting at the bottom of my mind that's just very subtly this like disconnection from reality and this detachment. And for me, it all started, this is getting a little personal here, but basically like a year and a half ago or so, I was dating someone, and has it been that long? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So like a year and a half ago, I broke up with somebody that I was dating. And the very same night that happened, I got this experience of this kind of, this like derealization that kicked in and felt kind of like this very persistent but much milder form of what I had experienced sometimes when I would be high. And it took me, honestly, I think it's only just now, like I've been talking about in the past few videos about how this probably the best I've been feeling in a long time, it really took that whole time before, like, this is the first time now where I'm feeling pretty normal again. Like, it feels like that subtle feeling has finally gone away, and it took the whole year to get over that and get back to normal. And I think that came from that experience because because I think, like, deep down, this girl that I was with at the time, I think it was a relationship that I deep down knew that I should never have gotten myself involved with. Um, Essentially, it was like, not that anything particularly bad ever happened or that anyone did anything wrong, but just that I knew that it was something that wouldn't be able to work out, and I pursued it anyway. And so it was like a situationship type of thing, and that's really something that at the core of who I am as a person is just, like, not my style. It's not something I would do. If I'm being bluntly honest, I actually think things like situations are straight up immoral. And I'm also someone with a very heavy conscience, and so, like, anytime I think I've done something wrong, I can be, like, extraordinarily hard on myself. And not to say that to be like, oh, I'm such a good person. I mean, to the point where it's very unhealthy, where, like, I'll be hard on myself over things that are, like, really not even that big of a deal. Or even in the past, I would criticize myself in situations where actually someone else had done wrong to me, but I was always just kind of, like, fixated on my own flaws and my own mistakes. And that can result in you living your life in a way where you're, like, extremely low self-esteem, or letting people take advantage of you, or things like that. So yeah, I don't mean to say this as, like, a bragging point or anything, or like I'm such a good person. I mean, I think it's like a neurotic psychological thing. And so I think with this situation, I felt deep down, I think that I had done something wrong here, that I knew I shouldn't have pursued this in the first place. And so now I think deep down I felt bad about it. And I maybe wasn't allowing myself to explicitly feel that emotionally. And so in some sense it was bottled up. And my theory here is that my brain kind of, like those emotions instead manifested themselves as this, like, underlying anxiety in my brain. And that it took me the whole course of the whole year after that of, I guess, working through that and coming to terms with it, to finally get over it and allow myself to relax and recognize the mistake I made, because I do think that, and to get to a place where I understand myself better now and have gotten back in touch with who I am, and realizing that not just over at that time, but over the past couple of years or few years or so, that I haven't been completely, that I had lost sight of who I was, which is something I've talked about here many times as well. So yeah, I guess in the end, I just thought it'd be interesting to share about my similar experiences with this HPPD and anxiety issues and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, though, to say that if you can ride it out, go, I hate to be platitudinal, but kind of like, let yourself experience things. I don't mean in terms of doing drugs. I mean, I mean, like, when you feel the anxiety coming on, when you feel like this need to use coping mechanisms to escape, whatever, to instead just let the feelings come and ride them out, and let them come out of you, and deal with them and confront them head on, instead of trying to shove them down, because they'll tend to come out one way or another anyway. And I think that's been the source of a lot of my problems over the last few years, and not being in touch with myself. And so ultimately I want to, just give that tip and say that, however, on the other hand, I am very grateful to be where I'm at now. I thank God for that. And I feel like I am finally able to begin a new stage of my life in which I know who I am, and I can be confident in that now, and armed with so much more experience and wisdom that I've gained over the past several years. And yeah. What can I say? I'm excited about it. And I look forward to seeing what the future holds for a version of me that is finally back in touch with himself. Peace.